Hello and welcome everyone. You're watching another edition of our special, The Cup That Matters during the 2015 World Cup. And this evening, we have a very special guest who's come all the way from down under for the World Cup for us. Please welcome Andrew Symonds, two-time World Cup champion, right here in our studios. Andrew, how does it feel?
Very good. Good to be back in India.
Yeah. All right. Next to him is, of course, Nikhil Chopra, a resident cricket expert. And we'll also go across to Melbourne, where our consulting editor... We start with the match of the day, Bangladesh beating Afghanistan by 105 runs in their opening match of the 2015 World Cup. Mushfiqur Rahim was named man of the match for his 71 runs. Bangladesh, in fact, had a poor start, and at one stage they were struggling at 119 for 4 by the 30th over. Then came the big partnership, a 114-run stand between Rahim and Shakib Al Hasan. Mushfiqur scored 71 of 56 deliveries with 6 fours and a 6, while Shakib scored 63 of 51 to post 267 in their 50 overs. In response, Afghanistan had the worst possible start. The team lost their first 3 wickets for just 3 runs on the board. Shenwari with 42 and skipper Nabi with 44 were the only batsmen to provide any resistance, but that wasn't enough as Afghanistan was bundled out for 162 by the 43rd over. Bangladesh captain Mashrafe Mortaza picking up 3 wickets, while Shakib had an all-round performance, bagging 2 wickets as well together with his innings in the batting lineup. Here's a look at the points table now, and makes for interesting reading. Of course, it's just the start of the World Cup. Bangladesh at number 3 place, having picked up 2 points below New Zealand and Australia, and above teams like Sri Lanka, England and Scotland. So no fairy tale debut for Afghanistan. Andrew, you were watching this match closely. Not a surprise that 2 of the most experienced batsmen in the Bangladesh lineup were the ones that gave, the match-winning performance with the bat. Shakib, in fact, picking up 2 wickets as well.
Yeah, I mean, in your first game, we talked earlier about starting well, gives the team confidence, gives the group confidence. Once you get that first game under your belt, you can just sort of relax into the competition a little bit. And your experienced men doing the job, which is always good, gives the team confidence as well, and good for the whole group.
Right. For Afghanistan, of course, this was always going to be testing ground, isn't it? In their first match, no fairy tale. They could have given Bangladesh a run for their money, but the bowling actually did pretty well in the beginning. I was
going to say, they gave the Bangladesh side a scare as well. You know, the tall left-arm seamer picking up those wickets just gave the Bangladesh side a fright. But like Andrew said, the experienced guys coming in, stitching a partnership together, Shakib and Mushfiqur Rahim, getting to 264. That's when the difficult part is. Shivani, once the ball starts turning a bit, or it's a little on the slow side, Shakib and the other spinners are far too experienced for the Afghanistan side, to go out there, stitch up a little, game plan against them, which side of the wicket to bowl. It was hard for them. Because they don't have any experience in international cricket, it was very hard to come up against the Bangladesh side. For the rest of the world, this match might be a little boring, but imagine the fans from these respective countries, the associate members who are getting a chance to play in the World Cup. Big deal for them, Andrew. I mean, how do you feel about such a World Cup format, 14 teams? A lot of the matches might not be very interesting to the rest of the world, but for these fans, it's a big occasion.
It is, and I looking around the crowd during that game, there must be a lot of travellers come from overseas to come watch their teams play, which is terrific for cricket in their respectable countries, terrific for Australian tourism, to get people like that from those parts of the world to come and see Australia. So yeah, it'll be a good experience for families as well as the support that these teams are going to need. But
there's a flip side to it as well, which means the World Cup format becomes extremely long and, drawn out. Do you think this is the right balance that the ICC has managed?
Yeah, in my opinion, probably no. Maybe they need to have some sort of a process, elimination process, where there's only probably 12 teams in, 2 teams miss out each World Cup. But that's not for me to decide, that's just my opinion.
All right. Your opinion is why you're here.
Also, Shivani, the idea is to globalize the game. Andrew's absolutely right. Not to increase the length of the World Cup. If you have that elimination process going through, 2 of the top teams qualify with the other test-playing nations as well. It's a great big booster. Some of the other teams will look forward to that. And the whole idea is to get many more countries involved. That's the only way forward for the game.
So maybe about 10 teams is just about the right number of teams. The 8 top teams and then
the 2
minnows. Or maybe 12 maximum. All right, moving on to the big teams. Of course, the big news today from Melbourne was that Gary Kirsten joined the South African camp. Of course, he's employed as a consultant during the World Cup. This could be a big boost for the Proteas ahead of their big encounter against India. After a day off, South Africa were busy with their practice sessions since morning. Kirsten was seen helping the Proteas during the net session, apart from talking to players like AB de Villiers and Morne Morkel individually. His arrival could prove to be decisive, considering he has worked closely with the Indian team, taking them to the 2011 World Cup title. The former cricketer could play a major role in advising the Proteas and help them with the strategies to deal with India's batsmen and bowlers. This big match, of course, is on the 22nd of February, coming Sunday. India have never beaten South Africa, remember, in 3 attempts at the World Cup. So a little bit of a battle against history for the men in blue. It's a big test, and it remains to be seen if Dhoni's men can break the jinx.
Behind me is the Langham Hotel, where both India and South Africa are staying. And there was a lot of excitement last night in the South African camp when Gary Kirsten joined the team, coming from India, where he was part of the IPL auctions. Even in the practice today, the Gary influence was evident. He was talking to AB de Villiers, training David Miller, giving tips to a number of South African batsmen, and then finally doing the throwdowns for which he is famous, having done it for years with Sachin Tendulkar. The South Africans clearly are ready, and Gary's joining them has given them new verve and new impetus. Can they win the World Cup is a question for which we will wait. But Gary's joining has definitely boosted the South African morale. With Manish Mathur, Boria Majumdar in Melbourne for Headlines Today.
Right, before I go back to Melbourne and get more details from Boria, Andrew, how do you think this works? You know, someone who's been such an integral part of a World Cup winning unit then is in the opposition camp. Do you think it makes a difference, or it is more psychological more than anything else?
Yeah, it could make a difference. I think South Africa are just desperate to have people around them that have had World Cup success. Gary Kirsten, obviously a very successful South African cricketer, has had success winning a World Cup with India.
As a coach. So that makes a big difference, isn't it? Because they have the title of the choker, so maybe he can help them with that. Yeah,
like, I remember when I was playing back in the day against South Africa in World Cups, you could always see it was on their mind, and we played on it as well. So having him around might steady them up a bit and just reassure them that it is possible to win this, and try and blank that out no matter how they're feeling.
Right. India would hope that's not the case, Nikhil, of course. But we spoke to Gary in the run-up to the World Cup, and he felt this is South Africa's best chance since 1999 World Cup, in over 15 years now. What do you think is going to be his focus? Because he was known as a man who was very good in instilling confidence when he was with the Indian team, and perhaps that's his role there as well.
Well, first and foremost, I think for any coach, you know, you look at the South African side and you look at talent all around. They need, absolutely. Yeah. You talk about the quicker bowlers, you know, with Dale Steyn, Morne Morkel. You look at the batting, AB de Villiers, Kela Miller, Dumini, Hashim Amla. There's some world-beating match winners in that side. But and like Andrew said, you know, for South Africa, it's always been the battle between the years. At the end of the day, come the business end of the tournament, something scares them, you know, or maybe they get ahead of themselves and they, you know, completely choke up. But the World Cup's just started. It's a little too early to say whether they'll win or not, Shivani. I think let them take each game as it goes. But for Team India, even if Gary's gone in the opposition camp, don't forget, Team India knows if Gary has been working with their weaknesses as well as a player, you are mentally prepared as well. You've tried to, you know, iron out whatever problems you've had, and you probably see it coming as well. This is largely a very different squad than he worked with till the 2011 World Cup. So there are, you know, only 4 players who played that World Cup in this squad. Let me go across to Boria in Melbourne. We spoke to him earlier, and I asked him about the Indian camp, you know, especially with Gary Kirsten arriving for the South African team. How was it like first for South Africa, and then we'll get to the Indian camp as well.
You know, the South Africans came in first, and obviously there was a lot of intensity in that South African practice. The thing to watch out for was individual drills. David Miller batted with 1 stump. Farhan Bahardien was told by Gary Kirsten to perfect the cover drive, and each time he made a mistake, Gary kept throwing balls to him. It was a la Sachin Tendulkar and Gary Kirsten's practice of throwing down balls. He threw some 88 balls in 20 minutes. That is the kind of impact Gary can have on a particular team. Alan Donald was seen with the bowlers, Morne Morkel, Dale Steyn and some of the others, practicing in the middle of the ground, it's a South African team that has a lot of talent. Question is, can they keep their head? In '99, it was the explosion in Alan Donald's head that threw South Africa out of the World Cup. But this time round, AB de Villiers, with this kind of a support staff, definitely has the side to win it.
Right, let's talk about India as well, Boria. What about the Indian camp? Were they relaxed or were they feeling the pressure a little bit before this big game?
The Indians trained for close to 2 hours. Duncan Fletcher was the first on the ground, went to see the pitch here at the practice ground. All the Indians were there. They did their team huddle, did their football, usual banter. Clearly the pressure has been released since that win against Pakistan. It's an Indian side that will now have a sense of purpose. I mean, even if they lose against South Africa, they know that they're almost certain to the quarterfinals, but they would want to win that. They've got a poor record against South Africa, 3 defeats in 3 in 1999. In 2011, we won the World Cup, but we lost against South Africa. So it's one record that they would want to redeem. So hopefully, come Sunday, the Indians will mount a challenge. But make no mistake, it'll be far more difficult than Pakistan. There's a lot of fragility in that Pakistan lineup, and in comparison, a lot of solidity in this South African one. So it'll be one heck of a contest. If the Indians win it, then you can start to believe that this team is back on track.
Absolutely. The real big test really against South Africa, complete opposite of what Pakistan represented in the first game. This team is going to come back very, very hard on India. Now, controversy has erupted again within the Pakistani cricket team at the World Cup after their humiliating loss to India on Sunday. The Pakistan national team's fielding coach, Grant Luden, has threatened to quit after complaining of misbehavior by 3 senior players. But the PCB convinced him to stay on in the end. According to reports, Luden complained that Shahid Afridi, MS Shehzad and Umar Akmal misbehaved with him during a training session on Tuesday. Luden apparently complained to the PCB chairman, Shahryar Khan, that some of the players were not cooperating with him and that hindered his work. In his message to Khan, Luden had threatened to resign if the players don't change their behavior. And according to reports, the PCB manager, the team manager Naveed Cheema, head coach Waqar Younis discussed the issue with them, and now it seems there is temporary truce as we speak. The training regime of the Pakistan team has been implemented by Waqar and his team of coaches, and this regime has already become a sore point in the team, with some players complaining that they are left exhausted before matches by the tough schedule. All right, let's see what Andrew and Nikhil have to say about this. Both of you are smiling already. This is not new, Andrew. I mean, every World Cup, every big tournament, something or the other happens between their players. They destruct themselves.
They do hit the self-destruct button sometimes, the Pakistan boys. Yeah, we used to get the feeling if there was a bit of squabbling, we'd try and sort of throw a bit of petrol on the fire, but hopefully they can work through it, because we need them to be competitive for the cause of the whole tournament as a spectator, so hopefully they can sort themselves out.
You know, leaving the players exhausted before a tournament, Andrew's probably one of the best guys that we have here today to answer that. You ask him how hard the Australians train in the field, looking at the boundary, how to cut the angles to get to the ball quickly. How exhausted were they? It's classic case of the seniors not working, not looking to work hard. It's surprising to have
professional cricketers complain of the practice regime.
It's only the senior cricketers in Asia, I'll tell you that. Who's it? Shahid Afridi, Umar Akmal. You know, people
Shehzad is hardly senior.
Forget about Shehzad. Even at least somebody instigating that whole problem. I'm sure after the India's game, they must have asked them to spend a little more time out there in the field, and the senior players are complaining.
But it's not just about that, Andrew. You've been, obviously watching Pakistan cricket and playing against them. There's always camps, and there's always, friction between senior players, and somehow the PCB hasn't managed to, bring them in line.
No, they've always had problems when they're squabbling and what have you. But I was thinking earlier, if I was a Pakistani cricketer, not being able to play in my own country, I reckon that would frustrate me. And so I reckon the smallest thing can set them off, because it's always nice to play at home, go home, sleep in your own bed. So I wonder whether things like that play on their minds and affect them as well. But listening to what they're saying earlier about players being tired, for me, they're not fit enough if they're tired. You should be as you should be.
It's good that the coach is making you feel tired, isn't it?
Yeah, well, but if you're fit enough, then you recover. Obviously, when you leave training, you're supposed to be tired, aren't you?
You've had some skirmishes with the CA as well yourself, isn't it?
yeah, I did, absolutely.
No, but Andrew never complained. He probably went fishing. He just forget about the training sessions.
We'll talk about Andrew's fishing trips as we go along in the 2015 World Cup. You can keep watching him on Headlines today. We've run out of time. Thanks a lot for watching.